The Residents are an American art collective best known for their avant garde music and multimedia works. They started as a group of high school friends in Shreveport, Louisiana. They started making amateur home recordings in 1965. In 1966, they decided to travel to San Francisco to join the budding hippie movement there. However, their truck broke down in San Mateo, California, so they decided to stay there. They named themselves the Residents after a rejection slip sent to them by Warner Brothers. So, over the years, they've made many avant garde works of art of various amounts of strangeness, including releasing about 50 music albums. Mostly who they are as a secret, they don't give interviews, and at times their work has been deliberately provocative.
Hi, my name's Dan. So this was my first time listening to this album, but it's not the first time I've reviewed Residence albums. I've come across them before. I started reviewing to this list or from this list, and there are two previous reviews in this list of Resident albums. The first one got a 3.3 out of 10, and the second got a 5 out of 10. So I didn't think of them particularly highly. So let's talk about this album, though. So I would broadly describe this as being a concept album. It's certainly got a theme that runs all the way through, which is about life in the Arctic, hence the title Eskimo. And it's kind of the elements of sound here. There are some musical elements, apparently mostly on homemade instruments. There's wind-like synth noises and other sound effect noises, sometimes rhythmic. And there is chanting in here that is heavily processed, so that most of the time you can't actually make out what's being chanted. Um, there's all sorts of interesting sonic processing on the chanting. Generally, I'd say it's more noise than music, but it does have musical elements, and it's somewhat soundscapey. It's got a feeling of creating atmospheres rather than creating tunes and harmonies. There are some. I mean, that's a general description. There are some odd things that come in that are different in the different tracks. So the first track has a kind of what's meant to be a walrus noise, which is relatively convincing. Not that I'm hugely familiar with the noises that walruses make. The chanting itself is apparently some of it is gibberish and some of it is advertising slogans. So the whole thing feels like it's got a point. It feels like it's got a progression that's moving through. It's also got a satirical feel to it, which is kind of not unexpected for the residents. And so my response to this has been better than it has to previous albums by the residents I've come across. So it's still very avant-garde and experimental, but it has an obvious focus and it's got some obvious skill in its design, if not always evident skill in instrumental playing. Yeah, but it's the focus isn't on instrumental playing. And I find that this pleases me because there's part of me that, despite the fact that I've responded badly to the residents in my experiences that I've had with them in the past, I've always wanted to like them. And that's because, in principle, the description of them as an art collective slash band, whatever they are, has been appealing to me. I think that the fact that they're trying to do experimental things, and I mean, in theory, in very much in favour of experimental music. And the fact that they've managed to keep their identities secret is also something that intrigues me. So as an entity, I felt like I wanted to like them, and here I finally got an album where there are qualities in here that I can get behind, and I quite like this album. So uh, I I have to say that it's as I am going through this process of reviewing albums, and I've been doing not just this list, but previous to this, other incarnations of reviewing, and I'm still trying to work out. Um, First of all, I always want to make sure I'm having genuine reactions to albums and not just what I think I should feel about an album. But I'm also still trying to understand those reactions. Is that there are times like this where yeah, I quite like this album, and Mostly, I think I can put my finger on why and trying to understand why I'm having these reactions. But I'm not always 100% sure that, whether the differences between something I don't like and something that I like, I'm actually identifying perfectly. But it's an ongoing process, and maybe by the time that I get to the end, I'll have a much better understanding of why I like some things and why I don't like others. Anyway, that's a little bit of a side thing. Just so to summarize, I quite like this album. It was an interesting experience. It's not particularly musical, as I said, but I didn't mind that. And as always, I would like to invite you to tell me what you think of this album. If you know it from of old, I know there are people who think that this album is a piece of genius, and maybe I can kind of get why. It might be that you listen to this album and you just don't get it. You just think, what on earth are they on about? I'd much rather listen to country and western or funk or something like that. And that's fine. All these reactions are hopefully genuine and definitely all valid. And I love to hear them. So please do talk to me through the comments. And that's it from me for now.